Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to a regular meeting of the Isla Vista Community Services District. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd also like to announce this meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yeah, Director Brandt,
Yes.
Clarity,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Here.
Freeman,
Here.
Aguilar's absent for now, Topliff,
Here.
and Deschler's absent as well.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they wish to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Made by Toplin. Is there a second? Seconded by Flaherty. Any public comment on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Deschler is absent, Director Topliff,
Yes.
Director Aguilar is here now,
Yes.
and Director Bertrand.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Now we're going to move to the public comment period. This is the time where any member of the public may speak on an item that is not on today's agenda. You can indicate that you wish to make public comment by hitting the raise hand button or putting something in the chat. Do any members of the public wish to speak on items not on our agenda today? I see a hand from Carmen. Go ahead, Carmen.
This is the old man reporting in. I'm concerned about participation of the community in the actions and the impact of the CSD. There was less than 1,000 people voted in the election to establish your utility users tax, and across town, less than 1,000 people voted in the park district's tax reform measure a few years ago. So it seems like you're skimming rather than in the middle of the community. And the pandemic, I know, has had something to do with that, but participation in those two elections is of major concern, I think. I've sent around to all of you a proposal to establish 3 newsletters per year. I think that you should seriously consider that. One in the fall to talk about Halloween and initiating all of the new people in town. One in the winter, and one in the spring. I think that would really help you, and then mailing those door to door. And you'd be surprised how inexpensive that is. I know there's a couple of companies that, in the past anyways, in the Goleta, that will set that up for you and mail things door to door. I hope that you will seriously consider this or some other methods in order to dig deeper into the community. But I think that would be the best start, my humble opinion.
Thank you for your comments, Carmen. I also want to let the record reflect that Director Deschler has joined us, so we have 7 members present. Any other comments from members of the public on any items not on today's agenda?
Is there by bringing it up in this Vox Populi section, does that mean that somebody on the board has to place that on a future agenda?
That's not a policy that we have. I think that voter participation is definitely something that I think a lot of us are concerned about as well. And I know I've spoken with our staff about some ideas that we have to try and increase that in the future. So I think that something will be coming to the board in the next number of months to try and address that issue. And I think we'll also talk about it a little bit more on another item on today's agenda under redistricting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, we're going to move now to the first action item, which is the Spring Festival 2022 request for proposals. I want to thank our committee members for helping draft this proposal and tweak it, and especially our staff for doing the legwork on all of this to bring it all together. For committee members, is there anything that you want to add first off before we hand it over to staff? All right, seeing none, go ahead, Jonathan.
Great, thank you. One second, got someone in the waiting room to approve. Sorry. So we've got an RFP for our Spring Festival based on the feedback from our last board meeting, where we had a memo that outlined a few of the ideas that would be in it. I don't think we went over the direct timeline, so I'll just go over that right now. We will be publishing this tomorrow. It'll be get into the independent classified section, and we will get it. I'm developing a list of different music festivals and event producers that I could send this out to, and we're gonna send it out to our email list and social media, but it'll be out for until January 10th is when the deadline. Oh, and that's a Monday. It's gonna be Monday, January 10th. And then the decision should take place on our January 25th board meeting. So the second board meeting in January. So that gives our committee 12 days or so to review and interview and make a decision to recommend something to the board. So that's the timeline that we've published. So it's about a month to propose. So this is all our regular RFP process, which is what we request from them, like a description from their firm, a letter of intent, work samples, resume of who's going to be working on this project from their firm, management plan, what we've actually had now for a few times. And then the criteria, we're also using a similar criteria, just adjusted for this event. So same kind of deal here. Now just to go down, we're proposing, just to go to the scope of services. This is the same project overview we used last time. It's saying, it's giving them the context that this has been a historical project for us that has been going on for now 5 years. And I linked them to some of the past events that we've had so that they can get an idea of what we have considered. And what responses about the heavy police presence and more coordination, just what the public has been telling us. We go in and talk about our objectives, and we went over these last time, but again, just to reemphasize: safe, healthy, and fun options for community entertainment, community building, our arts and culture, promoting our positive image, taking control of our narrative, keep it safe, keep it local. The event will be on April 2nd, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. as the active time, and that's the same active time we used before. There'll be a setup before that, but we end before 6 p.m., so we aren't under the festival ordinance. And I did get some, try to figure out what would help make this make more sense to people in the industry. So I did put this in to help them understand that they do have additional tear down and build days available besides just, we don't have to set up all in that morning. Some deliverables. This is pretty much the same ones. I think one I added was to develop a theme for the event, but that kind of goes in line with the branding. But that was something we had thought about last time too, is having a sort of theme. But these would be the deliverables, which would be a musical performance, as well as working with us to shut down the street for some sort of street closure event, and then a music event, maybe at the community center. So that's the general thoughts. We're gonna hopefully see what they propose based on their creativity. But some of the things we definitely need help with, and these are, again, what we needed help with before: soundstage and lighting production, producing the physical branding elements of a festival, the alternative public health and safety measures to provide safety and security at the event. So something that's based in harm reduction. And I put some event details. Vaccine requirement was something we talked about, local focus on the marketing, which is, again, something else we've talked about before. The free tickets for registration and tracking local address attendance. Again, that was a feature from our last event. Having the enclosed area for the musical performance with a check-in. Use of Isla Vista vendors. We put exclusive use on here to the extent possible. I mean, if there's not always going to be something in Isla Vista, but as much as possible. Making sure that the supermajority of the talent are Isla Vista residents who are local bands, musicians, and performers. And something I was advised by people in the music industry is that to put supermajority instead of only, is because sometimes having just even a slightly bigger name from the local area who doesn't live in Isla Vista, but maybe in Santa Barbara, is good for the locals themselves to be on the same billing as someone, bigger than them. It helps them get their name out. So for helping out our local bands, that would be helpful to them. Harm reduction based security system I mentioned, and then water and power access would be available. So that would be something to convey to them. We have some, not a lot. So I put budget from what our board discussed last time is 80 to 100,000 funded by IVCSD and potential partners. So we haven't secured any formal agreements for funding, but like we discussed last meeting, there were other sources. Like UCSB had made a contribution of 30,000 to the last event in 2020. They didn't end up being able to move forward. So there are sources to seek. And we have asked for this before in our previous proposals, is a sponsorship plan to help increase for more budget or to help reduce our costs. So having a sponsorship plan, and then making sure though that this event is not for profit and community based. That's the scope of work. This is our regular professional services agreement that's part of this. And then I thought some things and then these are our goals, those have not changed. And then I put some related documents, which I'll include the links to, but like a map of the area, the Isla Vista Loop, which is where we're mainly thinking of this happening, the festival ordinance, some pictures of the community center, and what the previous plan was, and all of the community feedback that we've received, so that they have equal access to knowing what our research has been and outreach has been. So that's the proposal. Would love any questions about this RFP.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. I'll just add one thing on the subject of partnership, is that we've had some preliminary discussions with the UCSB Office of Student Life, and they are interested in collaborating with us, particularly interested in what we can do with a street closure and how they can help populate that. And so we're meeting again in January to flesh out more what that looks like, but definitely promising discussions. Like Jonathan mentioned, there was the $30,000 that UCSB had allocated for this in 2020 for the event that didn't end up happening. That was all based around the Office of Student Life's Sunfest event and migrating that over to Isla Vista, consolidating with our event. So we're excited for that. And I'll add another thing that we've had some preliminary discussions on. I know I've spoken with Catherine about this, is ways that we can engage student leadership at the university in terms of helping evaluate the proposals. I've also thought about that in terms of bringing other partners in the community to the table to try and help make sure that the proposal that ends up getting chosen has a lot of buy-in. So I'll just add that to the end of the presentation and open it up for the board if anyone has any questions for Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll add, just thank you for reminding, because we did do it the outreach, and I just didn't mention that I also spoke to Kimberly at the Park District about our intentions here, and we had a great conversation and lunch today talking about it. So they're fully aware too of what we're planning, and they don't have current plans on that day.
Okay, I see a hand from Director Bertrand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, I was not at this last discussion because I was away at a conference, but I just really want to thank the committee for putting this together. This is a really solid plan. It builds off of our previous efforts, and importantly, it's right in line with our goal of providing a high quality experience that residents can enjoy, that Isla Vista can be proud of, and importantly, that is safer than what has traditionally happened. So I'm really excited to support this. I appreciate all of the focus on partnerships, and I think this will be really positive. So thanks for bringing this forward. Look forward to voting yes.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Do any board members have questions about the proposal for Jonathan? Director Deschler.
Yes, I have a couple comments or questions. First of all, I must have spaced it out, but I don't remember the focus being on music. When we talked about the festival, when we talked about this at last board meeting, I thought it was an event, but I didn't realize the focus was on a musical event. So I made that comment because I'm trying to visualize if you're having something at the community center, what is the how many people, what is the occupancy of the community center or the surrounding area if the event is there? It seems like there's not a lot of space to have a musical event there. So I wanted to ask that just in general, what the occupancy was, given that the budget is $100,000.
Yeah, the community center occupancy, I would need to pull it up right now. I would imagine that, I would say like maybe they're gonna be outside on the patio and the music could be heard from the street and people could enjoy it, not just inside the community center, but it'd be, music creating an atmosphere. And there is a possibility that, there's the grass area around the community center. So there's something we can do with that too, that is part of the parcel that we have. I don't know the exact occupancy of that though.
Just that seems significant to me to really understand a site plan for holding a musical event at the community center and thinking, where will people be? Where will the music be? It's $100,000 is a huge amount of money, and it just doesn't seem like that is a huge venue to have that type of event. But I'm not an expert on this, but I just when I visualize the space, I can't visualize where people are going to be to have multiple musical events.
Thanks for that, Director Deschler. I just do want to point out that the musical component has always been core to this since 2020. And so just wanted to add that in there to make sure everyone is on the same page, that that's kind of the entire, I think, kind of idea behind throwing an event, is to attract people with wholesome entertainment away from the other options that happen.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess when we talked about closing Pardell, I thought that there was going to be a focus on doing pop-up events or other type of events to draw people into that area. So that's what I was thinking, that there was going to be more of a component on Pardell that was not necessarily music related.
And I think it could be that, and maybe part of the musical act it's distributed. It's not all in one place. Maybe they've got different musical acts in different places. And you know, I couldn't draw the site plan myself or figure it out either. And I think we'll have to look at what is proposed to us, and like we're doing with our other RFPs, is working with the proposals to come to something that works. And you know, I will mention that Kimberly did ask if we would like to rent that park today, and I told her it's not part of our plan right now, but she did ask me if that would be something we'd be interested in. And you know, if that was something we were then interested in based on the proposals, I'm sure we could have that conversation, but she did bring it up today.
Thanks for sharing that, Jonathan. That's good for us to know. Are there any other questions about the proposal for Jonathan?
I have a predictable comment when we get to that point.
Well, seeing as there are no other questions, I think you can go ahead.
I hate to waste everyone's time, but I also feel bad just voting no arbitrarily at the end of a discussion without having said anything. So I will be voting no on this, as I have voted no on many similar discussions or many similar things that we've considered. I do not believe that it is the place of the Isle Vista Community Service District to be working on recreation in the community, and I believe it was the intention of the law that we were drafting over the course of all of the time that we had worked on AB3 to not have the Isle Vista Community Service District work on recreational activities. There's already an existing government in the area that handles recreational activities, and I believe that it is from a standpoint of working together with other local governments, that we should not be actively working on the same things that other governments do, even if we believe that we can stretch one of our powers in order to cover that. I do believe that this is a stretch of our power, more so than some previous things we've talked about, because we are talking about not just operating things within our community center. We were talking about closing a street and running an event along a street, working with local businesses, operating in public spaces. And so this concept of temporary community facilities seems very confusing to me. This is a very expensive event, and this is an event that I honestly don't actually think is going to get well attended. Partly just because I believe that the concept of Deltopia has largely died. And so it seems to me like an inefficient use of our resources and an inefficient usage of our time, which I do believe should continue to be focused on things like the rental mediation task force, and things like the police reform that we largely ended up dropping from our board discussions a long time ago without taking much action at all on. I believe that, one more thing here, amount of, and I believe that we're already the goal that's being described here of attempting to redirect focus from an event that is otherwise somewhat chaotic in the community is an obsolete goal, because Deltopia has largely died before the pandemic. And I'm under the impression that the main thing that many of us were concerned about, which was issues with public safety and the expense, both from the physically the cost out from our residents in terms of the actual the danger that they experience, as well as the literal cost of the amount of money that is spent on police, has already been decreasing. And so we did not actually, I think, ended up getting the final numbers on that, but I do believe that the Sheriff's Department has been decreasing their expenditure quite drastically because Deltopia had largely died. And so to the extent to which we are going to be working on constructing some kind of party or event, I do believe that this is something that people should be taking up with the Parks District, whether it be in public comment or whether it be going to the Parks District board and running for it. They oftentimes have people have open spots. They have uncontested elections. If you wanted to take over that board and use it to spend their entire budget on a party, more power to you. I think you'd succeed. Sorry for wasting your time on that, because I know that I've always been a minority of one on this, but I did just feel really wrong just voting no at the end of the discussion without saying anything about it. So thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Jay. While I respectfully disagree with them, I appreciate your perspective. I do want to add one thing, though, that I think is really important and central to why I really care about this issue, and that's that I think you might have misspoke. It's actually not true that attendance was decreasing at Deltopia before the pandemic. From the Sheriff's Office estimates, it was rising. And I know a number of us who are here on the board or on our staff got a chance to go and see what things were like last year. It was an increase from the year before that. And so I think this is a really important issue that we need to continue to address. Just wanted to throw out the statistics there. Director Deschler, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, hold on. I just wanted to say that I wanted to just shout out to Jonathan. I think that the quality of the proposal was excellent. And it's just really great to see the proposals that you've been putting out lately. They just look really good, really professional, very comprehensive. And it's going to be, and I just appreciate all the time and effort that you're putting into really developing the proposals to get the right people to respond. So I just wanted to say that to you because I know you're this is becoming something that you're doing quite a bit of, but it really shows you're doing a really great job on them. So that's all I want to pass that on.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. Any other comments from board members? All right, seeing none, let's hear from the public. If you have a public comment on this item, you can either hit the raise hand button or you can put something in the chat and I can go ahead and call on you. First, we're going to go to Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, everyone. I have a couple of questions and comments. I think my question is a kind of a procedural question, which is that like I typically get emails out from Jonathan when it comes to committee meetings, and I didn't see an email regarding the Spring Festival committee meeting, and I'm wondering if that a different type of committee? Did I just miss an email? So that's just a procedural question. But most of my comments have to do with what Director Deschler said, that I think there is a valid point to be made that using the community room as an exclusive music venue for the sake of this festival may not be the best idea. So I appreciated the comments said that thinking expanding beyond that scope would be a great idea to maybe have as an additional music venue, have it as an event for a venue for a specific space or a specific purpose. All be where all the concerts could be. I don't know. Obviously, the proposals will be getting the relevant aspect of that. And then lastly, Jonathan quickly mentioned meeting with the general manager of the Parks and Rec Department or Rec and Parks Department, and mentioned a park potentially being used. And I just happened to miss the park that was named, whether it be Little Acorn or Anascoyo. I'm curious which park that was. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Oh yeah, just to answer, our committee is an ad hoc committee, so it doesn't have a Brown Act noticing requirement for this Spring Festival. So that's the procedural, and no specific park was mentioned, just the question oh, would you all need a park for that? So we didn't talk about specifics.
Thank you for your comments, Mark. I appreciate the feedback. Are there any other comments from members of the public on this item? Okay, not seeing any, I'll bring it back to the board. I do appreciate the feedback on the site plan. I hesitate to try and provide any feedback about how we can better direct that because I'm not a music professional and I don't do site plans. But if there is a way, maybe we can provide that feedback of the idea of maybe a dispersed sort of event is something that could be helpful. I know that, like I mentioned earlier, we already have some others that want to help participate in other dispersed activities along with the street closure. So I'm not sure. I know, Jonathan, that you're in charge of fielding the questions when proposers come back and also providing them with additional feedback. So maybe that's a good thing that we can try and incorporate.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I actually have a constructive comment on that, if I may.
Go ahead.
For what it's worth, I mean, the RFP is indicating potential areas where an event could occur. It's not clear to me that the RFP is limiting the idea of a music festival where the music will occur at a particular location as opposed to occurring with pop events in the street or whatever it is. I would think that would be part of what we would expect to get back from people who are proposing on this RFP, is where they think it would be most beneficial to put the music parts or what other kinds of associated events, what they think that they can pull off with the money is specified. So it's not as much of a it feels like it shouldn't be that much of a concern that there isn't a particular site plan in here, because I would expect the site plan to be something we would get back from the contract.
Yes, that's a great point, Director Friedman. And I'll also add, just for the benefit of the public, because I know RFP, it's kind of a weird terminology and people might not understand how the process works. But at this point now, I know that I think every single one of our board members has served on one of these RFP committees that helps develop one, whether it's related to this or planning or parking. But it's normal that once we get proposals back and we identify, or the evaluation committee identifies one that they want to move forward with, that there's a little bit of a negotiation process with whichever proposer it is that the evaluation committee is going to recommend, in order to make sure that it gets right. We don't have to just accept whatever it is that they bring to the table as is. We can help work with whoever it is that the evaluation committee decides that they want to work with to pull off the concept. So the feedback's not in vain. It's actually very helpful, especially for when it gets to that stage of the process. Any other comments from directors on this item?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this request for proposals and publish it.
There's a motion made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Bertrand. And so with that, I think, Jonathan, I think you're ready to call the roll.
Yeah. Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Beeman,
No.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Eschler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Well, I want to thank our board. This is a big step. Feels like we're kind of picking up where we left off pre-pandemic. And I know we'll all be really excited to see what proposals we get back, and echo the comments to really thank Jonathan for all the work that he put into this. I ran into at least one person who is in the musical arts industry, and Jonathan had been picking his brain trying to figure out how to craft it exactly right. So really appreciate your work on this, Jonathan.
Oh, yes. It was fun to do this one.
Absolutely. Next, we're going to move to the next item on our agenda, 4.2, and I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. Given my employment with the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, I'm going to recuse myself from this item. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Jonathan, if you could put me in the waiting room and bring me back, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. So the next item is 4.2, Santa Barbara County Redistricting Update. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan to introduce this.
Great. So it was at our last meeting that we had a request to do a update for the Santa Barbara County Redistricting Commission, which has now essentially concluded their work on redistricting. And what's attached, I don't think we need to go through the whole report of what's attached, but I'll just pull up the final map that was passed. And here it is. It's not even the part with us is in it. So that's all that's important. So this is the final map of where Isla Vista got placed. We are now in the 2nd district, which means there'll be an election here in June for county supervisor, even though we just had one in 2020 March. So that's a change, and we're still assessing what that change means practically with interactions with our county supervisor. I think we're waiting to evaluate and see how that evolves. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It was me and Spencer had spoken on our own behalf, and others I know did too. But it was a long process, and this is, a change for Isla Vista now.
Thanks for that update, Jonathan. You've taken it. I was going to say, if you want to zoom in a little bit.
Back up, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's tough with these non-detailed maps, but if you can zoom in more to the 2nd district so that we can get a peek at exactly what that looks like. So the 2nd district now includes Isla Vista, Eastern Goleta, the Eastern Goleta Valley or Nolita, Hope Ranch, the Mesa, a part of West Downtown near Cottage Hospital, otherwise known as Oak Park, as well as the Hope Avenue area of Santa Barbara. So that's our new supervisorial district. I'll just start off the discussion on this. I always knew that it was somewhat of there was a potential for Isla Vista to get moved into a different district during this process, but after hearing the many public comments from people from Isla Vista, from people from Western Goleta that wanted to be paired with Isla Vista, and from others, I honestly did not ever believe the commission would ever go through it. Just as background, the commission that decides the districts is an independent commission made up of regular citizens of Santa Barbara County, not affiliated with the Board of Supervisors, and they do have full authority to adopt the map. And so I believe it was yesterday evening where they took a vote to adopt this map, and it will now be sent to the county and I guess go into effect at a later date. But I really think this portends some big challenges for Isla Vista. As was mentioned earlier in a public comment, many folks, including our staff, Jonathan, folks who are here on the board in the room, worked really, really hard to engage voters in the 2018 election when we were on the ballot with Measure R. And we achieved some good things. We achieved the highest voter turnout ever in Isla Vista's history for a midterm primary. But the unfortunate thing is that voter turnout was still 20%. And I think that this decision is going to have huge ramifications for Isla Vista's voice and ability to turn out voters to have leverage and affect our supervisor on things that matter now that we have really been disenfranchised by placing us in an odd year or a midterm election where there are more systemic barriers to voting. So I'm disappointed with the results. I respect the commission, and I do think we will be well served by the second district. We are paired with some other unincorporated areas in this district that face, just in general, they have a similar experience because they're unincorporated. They don't have as much in common with us as maybe other unincorporated parts of the county may have. However, it is kind of the decision that we're going to live with. So I appreciate everyone from Isla Vista that spoke up in this process and provided their input. I thought there was some really passionate and inspiring public testimony. It's disappointing to see us get the short end of the stick. It feels like we often do here at Isla Vista. But I'm really happy to see everyone that was able to engage in the process and let the commission know that, what was going to be best for us, even if they didn't go with it. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion and questions from the board. I see a hand from Director Friedman.
Yes, thank you. So some of the things I'm about to say, some of you may have heard before at the Isla Vista Community Network meeting, but there's a different venue and many different people here. I'm going to do a different order this time. There I did kind of good news, bad news. Here I'm going to do bad news, good news, partly in order to kind of glide out of what Spencer was saying. I want to first kind of explain something that I think is important as background information on something Spencer was noting about the midterm elections. Why, at least in my opinion, why Isla Vista might be very different from other places in the community or in the county with respect to our midterm election turnout. Because one thought process I could see some people having is that, well, somebody had to be in a midterm election. Midterm elections always have somewhat depressed turnout, and so could be Isla Vista. But Isla Vista is a community where we all play musical apartments between the primary and the general election, specifically between the primary and the general election for this election. We are also a number of often first-time voters and the who were having to be educated about both their civic duty in general, but also about the how this particular election works. And so the result is that we have to, and how elections in general work. The result is that we have to either or just initially register the entire community during what essentially amounts to 2 months leading up to this election, and then attempting to drive voter turnout. Whereas in other communities in the county, we people have already been registered to vote. The stability of you staying within your within your district and within your house is just so much higher. And so the moving us into a district that is labeled an even number puts us on the midterm election, and it was in some sense the background goal of a number of people who were involved, but even in the drafting of this map, in order to do that. This is something that I've been experiencing since when I ran for supervisor in 2016. I got a number of questions from people throughout North County asking, you're from Isla Vista, don't you think Isla Vista shouldn't be in our district? And the idea that the county has been in some sense gerrymandered in order to be able to have Isla Vista in the 3rd district in order to affect the political dynamics has come up often. And so in some sense, some of the drive towards setting up this independent redistricting commission and then the gamesmanship related to who is on it has been, I'm often blunt about my politics here, has been kind of driven towards attempting to get students out in order to move the county slightly more conservative. So I'm rather concerned about this, both from the perspective of Isla Vista and from the perspective of what it means for the county politics dynamics in general. The idea that we might start seeing a 3-2 conservative majority on the county, which would end up leading towards bad decisions, at least from my perspective, related to oil, related to certain kind of like land use throughout the county and the unincorporated areas. So I'm sometimes just feel absolutely devastated by what ended up occurring. So then I look and I look, what I said is the gamesmanship and things leading up to this. So this independent citizens redistricting commission was sadly was forced to be dragged out for a very long period of time due to the pandemic and due to the census data not being ready. I mean, even when we were coming up on the final deadlines on things like maps, the deadlines had to keep being pushed because the final map deadline was actually before we had the final census data, which kind of undermines the whole premise of doing redistricting. If you don't have new data, why are you even modifying the lines? So over the course of the extremely long period of time, the carefully balanced, which was into the intention of the actual law. This is like not carefully balanced by gamesmanship, but the carefully balanced by like the intention of the whole setup for demographics and for politics got skewed because they ran out of backup participants. And so we ended up, I believe, actually at the very end with the scraping the bottom of the barrel on who we actually had cleared to be on the commission. If anyone else had left, we might have just had an empty seat. And so the result of this, then, when you actually go into, and I just want to, something explicit that I want to say here is that the Isla Vista, it wasn't just like a side effect in some sense of other decisions. It wasn't that it was just they were rebalancing things, and you could say that Isla Vista just happened to have to get moved somewhere. There were 2 straw polls that were taken during the original penultimate meeting. Actually, now I guess penultimate or whatever you want to say, meeting, in order to decide whether or not Isla Vista would get moved into the 2nd district. And there was an implicit one when they decided which of the final candidate maps was going to get used as the base map for them to work on. And that, and one of the maps moving us into the 2nd district and the other map leaving us in the 3rd district, in that particular case with Lompoc and not the San Ynez Valley. And that vote was a 5-6 vote. And I remember thinking when that vote was happening that this is essentially them taking a vote on Isla Vista, but they don't really want to say it's a vote on Isla Vista. They want to say it's a vote just on like what map it was. And then later in the meeting, like an hour later in the meeting, there were a couple commissioners who kind of organized and kind of kept poking at the idea that, maybe we should actually just try out what it would be like in order to move Isla Vista into the other area and redraw all the lines. And they managed to actually convince there to be a vote specifically about the movement of Isla Vista. And it was the exact same 5-6 vote. And so it wasn't like even a dominating position on that. It was the one vote, which is then what you could expect maybe happening because of the dynamics of what happened over the course of the attrition on the commission, which then led to something and so it was such a, I think, almost even extra devastating thought process that it was. I don't think it was kind of going to go this way. I mean, if you had asked me the question a long time ago, I didn't really think that the commission was going to end up going down this path. This was something that Spencer had mentioned, of like whether he actually thought this would really happen. A long time ago, I don't think I would have thought that would really happen. But then, as the commission was having to have cycled out all people, it started to get more and more real that, oh no, maybe this might actually happen. I started attending meetings. I started making comments. But it's just, yeah. The one good thing I'm going to say is that Isla Vista has oftentimes, in the position of the supervisor elections, been unable to really care in the scope of the election between, hey, these two people who are running, who's going to do something better for us? Because when you have the people who are running in the election, we were in the swing district, and being in the swing district meant that on both sides, there was somebody who was saying, well, if you don't vote for this person, the other person's going to cause oil rigs throughout the county, for what it's worth, the people on the other side, if you don't vote for this person, all of our money is going to get spent on pension or whatever it is, they end up being so angry about. And so the one silver lining is that being in the second district, I think that we might actually be in an experience where we can go to a debate and not have all of the questions be about oil, or we can go to a debate and have the questions be about public works, about things like street lights, maybe that the larger unincorporated area of Nolita, something that we might be able to actually have some synergy with respect to the things that they are interested in of the county. That it'll be a very different feeling election, and I think that there are possibly some benefits to it, as much as I am just utterly devastated by the ramifications in some sense of the result. But thank you for putting up with this long spiel. It's somewhat discombobulated and maybe a little bit more blunt than people are maybe used to hearing from somebody in my position. But yeah,
I loved it.
Thank you for that, Director Freeman. I appreciate your spiel. I think it encapsulated a lot of what I've been thinking too. Are there any other comments or questions from board members on redistricting? Well, I'll just add, in the vein of voter engagement as it relates on how to move forward from redistricting. I know one of the things that Jonathan and I had spoken about briefly was, some of the ways that the community councils in Isla Vista used to help engage people about why they should get out and vote by holding these plebiscite votes, and kind of just throwing that around as an idea. And I think it's an interesting idea, entertained, but I think, there is a civic good and there is a benefit to our agency's position to engage more voters when it comes to election time, whether we as an agency have something on the ballot or not. And I think that there are things that we can do to help promote that in ways that we haven't in the past that we should consider. So I know we'll probably have future discussions about this as well, but it's good to kind of orient ourselves with where we are. I'll open it up for public comment. Any public comments on the redistricting item? Oh, I see a hand from Carmen. Go ahead.
I love Jay's presentation, but the elephant in the room wasn't mentioned, which is, after all of these years, the population increase in North County has exceeded the population increase in South County. So there had to be some kind of shift from south to north. And Isla Vista's impact on the rural North County has long been a problem, both for Isla Vista and for the North County rural areas. So I think that there's some really positive things to say about it from about the final maps from the perspective of the county, not necessarily of Isla Vista, but Guadalupe being part of Santa Maria now makes a whole lot more sense than what was going on before, for example. I am concerned that Greg, we're going to love Greg, just like we love Joan. Greg, you know, is a UCSB graduate. He ran for the Isla Vista Community Council at one time and lost. Carrie can tell you about that election sometime. But he's a really good person, and I think that we'll get along fine with him. I am concerned about this question of when the elections for the CSD board and the Park District board are. Are they in midterm or are they in presidential election years?
They're in both.
Oh,
So-
because you're split. So,
That's right.
But
The good news is that board of director elections happen during the November elections. What I'm really concerned about is the county supervisor elections happen during the primary elections.
right. And we have some concern about, I mean, Isla Vista is the one who's been saving the San Ynez Valley from itself. But now what's going to happen? Goleta is going to be counted on to do that. And I think you have mentioned that you think that that's could be pretty positive, that the third district can still stay pretty green. Would you like to comment on that?
Are you talking to me, Carmen?
Yes, yes. Excuse me, I'm pointing at you in the screen, but I didn't mention your name.
Well, I don't want to get too much into the politics of the situation, but I do think that with Goleta now in the third district, you know, there are a lot of things in common that Goleta has with Isla Vista in terms of voting patterns that could help continue to shape that district in a good direction. I know, I mean, me personally, at my personal time, will be there to help support. You know, our supervisor. She's always going to be our supervisor, given how much she's done for us.
That's true. She's been a really wonderful, wonderful supervisor.
Well, thank you for those comments, Carmen. I think that those are very well said. Very well said. And
Thank you.
as I mentioned before, we're definitely going to want to continue to talk about voter engagement, I think. Are there any other comments from members of the public? All right, not seeing any. Bring it back to the board if there's any final comments. Not seeing any, I think we will close out this item and move to the next 4.3. And Jonathan, I think we'll bring Ethan back in.
Yeah. Oh, well, we actually lost Ethan in the waiting room. I got to text him.
Okay. Well, once you're done with that, I think we'll move to item 4.3, Resolution 21-9, AB 361, subsequent adoption, correcting clerical errors in Resolution 21-9.
Right. Yeah, so this is how legal speak for we have to correct some errors. So I have a little script of, oops. Can you all still see the resolution? Or no, is it stopped sharing?
We can see it.
You can still see it? Okay, excellent. So on November 30th, we had the agenda packet that had resolution 21-9 that had some clerical errors regarding the dates of the resolution. And it's clearly our intent when we passed that for it to be for the next month moving forward on November 30th from December 1 to December 30 So on a substance level, the resolution was correct and the law was cited and the findings were made. But overall, we do need to fix the clerical errors, and it can be corrected nunc pro tunc, which we do one of these. We've had to correct resolutions every year. This year, we're only correcting one. Last time we had a few more, so we're getting better. So this is our one correction of the year to correct clerical and non-substantive mistakes. So what we're correcting is replacing November with December, making the dates 1 through 31, replacing the times with 12:01 with 12 in section 5, and replacing November with December, both instances. And so if the board does select this, then the prior resolution will just have the revisions made in retrospect and be effective for today's meeting. And then alternatively, we could re-adopt it and replace the prior version, but it's recommended to do the first option, which is to approve it nunc pro tunc. So
I'll make that motion that we adjust the prior resolution for clerical errors.
thank you.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any last questions from board members? All right, let's go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Eschler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We'll move to item 4.4, which is the adoption of Resolution 21-10 AB 361 for this coming month.
Yes, and I did correct a couple typographical errors that are now reflected in the resolution, which is one of the dates, I think was 2021 instead of 22, which we do mean 22. So that's now corrected and it's ready to go for adoption.
All right, any questions from board members? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
I will second.
Made by Bertrand, seconded by Topliff. Is there any public comment on this resolution? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. And Jonathan, can you do a roll call vote?
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Eschler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next, we're going to move to item 4.5, agreement with PARS for a 457B retirement plan.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna turn it over to Rachel. I'm gonna let her share her screen. We're gonna get a 5-minute presentation from her at PARS, the Public Agency Retirement. I don't know what the S stands for, system.
Services. You were close, yeah.
Great. And so she's going to present to us a bit, and we have attached on our agenda the agreement with PARS and the resolution to start our 457B retirement plan, which was the outcome from our last meeting where we discussed the memo and moving forward with this. So Rachel, you're able to share.
Right.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And good evening, members of the board. Glad to be with you. Pulling up my screen right now, so hopefully everybody can see this okay. And I'll first start by saying I am a former Isla Vista resident, UCSD grad, class of 2009, so glad to be with all of you fellow Gauchos as well. So let me give a quick overview of who PARS is and what this program entails. So for those that may not be familiar with PARS, as mentioned, PARS stands for Public Agency Retirement Services. We are a private company located down in Southern California, and we work exclusively with public agencies. So we work with special districts, cities, counties, school districts, community college districts, and really our core competency is to design, administer and do the implementation of various types of retirement plans to meet a specific public agency's objective. So just to give you an idea of the scope of the work that we do, as you can see on this slide, we do have over 2,000 retirement plans currently under administration with over 1,000 clients. Most of our clients are actually here in the state of California. Some more local agency names that you'll recognize: we work with City of Goleta, Goleta West Sanitary District, Goleta Cemetery District, so some special districts in your area. And we have over 6.4 billion in assets under administration. So we've been around since 1984 and really have a lot of experience in working with public agencies on different types of retirement plans. So in terms of the arrangement that we are setting up with your district, this would be administered by PARS, and obviously the member agency would be your district. And then the other two partners in this arrangement are our trustee, US Bank, who's the 5th largest bank in the nation, very conservative bank. They provide all of the oversight and fiduciary protection for the plan. And then this would utilize the investment platform of John Hancock. And this particular retirement plan does allow the individual employees within the retirement plan to actually select how they want to invest their funds. So just a quick overview of a 457B retirement plan. We do include here the limits to consider. There are maximum annual contributions that are indexed annually. So you can see here for anyone under the age of 50, that's going to be at $20,500. And these would be independent from any 401As or other plans. And as I mentioned, the investments will be directed through John Hancock. In terms of the administration, PARS is really going to be providing all of the ongoing administration for the district. So this should be minimal burden to staff. So ultimately, we will take care of educating the employees that are going to be entering into this program. There's no additional enrollment forms needed. Along with John Hancock, we will make sure that participants understand what this plan entails, as well as how to utilize that John Hancock platform to choose their investments. Everyone will be defaulted into a target date investment fund, and then they can certainly go ahead and adjust their investments from there. There is a variety of no-load mutual funds from which participants can choose. Most folks do end up just staying in those target date funds, which basically allows them to kind of set it on default and allow John Hancock to basically choose an allocation appropriate for an intended retirement date of age 67. And then when an employee is eligible for distribution, essentially when they no longer work for the Isla Vista Community Services District, they do have portability, and they would be able to take out their account balance as either a lump sum cash payment or otherwise roll it over into an IRA or another qualified retirement plan, or even take it as an annuity payment where it could pay out for a certain fixed period of time or even as a lifetime benefit. So a lot of flexibility for employees as well. And then last but not least, I mentioned PARS will really do all of the back-end administration so that Isla Vista Community Services District does not have to be involved in these types of things. We're a very conservative company in terms of monitoring any changes at both the state and federal level that could impact these plans, so they're very legally sound. We do all of the coordination of benefits. We prepare all of the statements for the agency. We do an independent trust audit, state controllers reports, and again, we'll make sure that this plan is staying within compliance. So I hope I stayed to 5 minutes, and I am happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Sanders. Are there any questions from board members? Director Topliff.
I noticed that your asset management fee is a minimum of $250 a month, so $6,000 a year, and that wouldn't actually hit your calculated amount until our plan assets were over $1.2 million. So that'll presumably be the level that we'll be at for quite a while. And I see that we're expecting to take that money out of the plan assets. Is that correct? Because I would think that we would be separately budgeting for that and that it wouldn't be part of our corpus that we're building up for our employees.
Jonathan, I may defer to you on how fees will be paid for this. There is a choice of whether to have those invoiced directly to the district or taken from plan assets.
Yeah, let's I think I missed it.
Maybe we haven't decided that yet.
Yeah, we didn't discuss that, but if there's a preference to pay it directly, I think that would be a good idea.
That would certainly be my preference. And then the only other fee that I see we might expect is legal fees. If there's some legal changes and we have to get into compliance. And I'm just wondering what that looks like, because I would think in a way it's kind of a boilerplate thing that you'd have to get all your clients into compliance. And so we would share the cost of what it costs you in total to get everyone in compliance. And
yeah, great question. So actually, we typically do charge a setup fee of $1,500, but we did work with Pete, who's the consultant assisting on selecting parts of the provider, and we've actually waived that setup fee. So that would normally go toward applying to the IRS if necessary, working with our legal team to set up documents, but that has been waived, so there are no additional legal setup fees at this time. And in terms of the ongoing compliance, that is something that is part of our services, so there are no other anticipated legal fees with this program.
because we know how expensive those attorneys are.
Yes, they sure are. Yeah, so that fee was waived. So even if we do chat with our attorneys in setting this up, that will not be a fee that will be assessed for the district.
Thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that, Director Topliff. Are there any other questions from board members? Seeing no other questions, thank you, Ms. Sanders, for the presentation. Thank you for being brief and also being thorough about the agreement. I'll just say to our board, it may be kind of administrative, and I can see some of you falling asleep. Just kidding. But this is an incredibly important step for our district to establish a retirement system for our employees. And I don't think that it should go overlooked, that this is a big step for us. And I want to thank the members of the committee that helped put together recommendations on employee benefits, including Director Freeman and Director Geis. Before Director Geis left our board, was very helpful in putting together these recommendations to get us to where we're at now. So very excited to be moving forward with this and doing right by our employees. If there's no other discussion from board members, I think that we are ready for a motion.
I have a motion with the edit, Director Topliff, that you suggested. So
there was a checkbox, and you're going to check the box that we're paying it separately.
yes, I just put, if you made a motion pay with the option to pay plan fees directly by the district. So whenever you make the motion, just add that.
Okay, I just made that motion.
Okay.
Gary?
Yes, so it's a motion to approve the agreement with PARS for a 457B retirement plan with the option to pay plan fees directly by the district.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second. Ethan, go for it.
All right, seconded by Bertrand. So now I'll open up public comment. Is there any public comment on the motion? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. If there's no further discussion, I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty?
Yes.
Dr. Freeman?
Yes.
Dr. Topliff?
Yes.
Dr. Aguilar? Dr. Bertrand?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
and Dr. Dashler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. With that, we will have a retirement system set up in short order for our employees. Great news. I guess that what we have to do now to make it effective is we have to go to item 4.6, which is the resolution formally adopting the 457B plan. Jonathan, you want to give some background of this?
Yeah, it's just the resolution that shows that our board of directors is adopting this, that we can take it to, PARS and say, look, we took official action to set this up.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Is that enough?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Made by Deschler, seconded by Topliff. Is there any public comment on the resolution? Seeing none, back to the board. We will go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt,
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty,
Yes.
Dr. Freeman,
Yes.
Dr. Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Deschler.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Thanks again, Ms. Sanders, for being here to present the information.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now we are going to move to the next section of our agenda, which is the organizational session. So this is something that happens every year where we make decisions about our board leadership, committee structure, meeting format, and additionally our board calendar. So the first item on the organizational session is the board president and vice president election. And I'll start off just to say I've been really honored to serve as the president of our board over the last 3 years, and honored that my colleagues have entrusted me with that responsibility. I really enjoyed leading the board and representing the IVCSD, and I'm proud of everything we've done together. I think we have such a thoughtful and engaged board, and we're really making good progress implementing important solutions and services like the Compost Collective and the Isla Vista Beautiful program, and jumping headfirst into the new challenges, planning, parking, alternative events. I've been proud that we've been able to do that together. And in the last year, we also have seen a lot of changes on our board. We've seen the voters elect 2 new board members, and we've also sworn in 2 new appointed board members. And, especially in Isla Vista, a community that has as much turnover and constant changes as we do, I really think that leadership development is something that's really important. It's the only reason I've been able to learn and grow over the past number of years. And so with that said, I'd like to hear first if there are any of our newer board members that are interested in serving in the capacity as president or vice president. Not seeing any. I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Well, thank you. I can't volunteer right now, but I did want to just really commend our board leadership, both President Brandt and Vice President Flaherty, for doing a tremendous job. I served as our first president from 2017 and 2018, and it's a big responsibility. And I really look up to Spencer and Catherine for taking this on, and I'm really proud of what you both have accomplished. And I do also recognize we have a board with a lot of new leaders, which is great, and definitely want to see how I can help support and how together we can all support the development of additional leaders both on this board and in the community. I think organizational meeting is a great time to reflect on the status of engagement in the district and how we are preparing to ensure that we have good leadership in the future. So I think you've done a great job, Spencer and Catherine, in promoting that. And I'm excited to see what other directors have to say.
Thank you, Director Bertrand, for that. Director Freeman, I see your hand.
Yes. So when we'd set up, we'd done some of our first and our second organizational meetings. One of the things that had come up was the idea that the vice president position might be kind of a setup in order to push people towards becoming the president. This is something that also you'll see in a lot of other local cities and things, where they will actually rotate through the people who are chairing, acting as president, and they will use the vice president position as kind of that setup in order to bring people into the president position. And so I would like to, maybe with that background, kind of directly look at Catherine and ask her, would you be interested in being president? I would be very supportive of you being president. This is something that I know is not offense to Spencer anyway. In fact, I've actually very much liked having Spencer as our president, but it's something that I want to make certain that there's not this perception that we're just going to have one person do it forever. I don't know, Catherine, would you like to do it?
Yeah, I've actually thought about it a lot and given it a lot of thought recently. And especially knowing our last conversations last year. But when thinking about this next year and the varying commitments and changes that will happen, I do worry that I will have the capacity to give all that the position demands. And so I have decided that I don't believe I will have the capacity to serve as president, although I wish that I did, because serving as vice president this last year, I've learned so much, and I could not be more humbled and grateful to be given the opportunity to serve in this leadership position. But that means so much to me, and I really appreciate you thinking of me. And please know that I have given this a lot of thought and weighed out all of my responsibilities. And if given the chance, I would love to serve as vice president again, but I know that you said allowing vice president as kind of the step before going to president. So I would also be totally happy stepping down and allowing someone else that opportunity as well. But I really, really do appreciate the consideration, and I'm very humbled by that.
And next thing I would like to ask is just, I'm curious to kind of directly then poke Marcos about interest in vice president.
I hate starting with I am interested. I have to be honest that I had not given this particular role in vice president much thought beforehand, but I have been looking at a lot of my responsibilities. But I do see that the main purpose is to serve our community and to serve our neighborhood, and that we have a diversity of opinion, and that we have a rotating leadership and responsibility to our community. So I am prepared, and I am willing to serve in the role as vice president.
Thank you for that, Marcos, and thank you for that, Catherine, as well. That great collection of thoughts. Director Deschler, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Spencer, I think you've done a great job, in a very thankless job representing as in your position. You managed to steer us all on course and shut us up when we need to, and keep us going when we should. And I appreciate it. It's quite thankless, but do know that I do thank you for all your work, and I think you do a really great job representing the district. I was also going to advocate for Catherine, and I just want to say that Catherine, I think it takes a lot of courage to say no, to really recognize your limitations and be honest and say, I can't do it. I want to do it, but I can't do it. So I just want to let you know, I appreciate you being able to. That takes a lot of maturity and insight, and so. Good luck wherever you wind up here. But I have also really appreciated when you've stepped forward in these meetings, and so we'll be together for the next year, but just in a different way, and that's okay. And then I was going to advocate for Marcos. I think it's real important that the person that leads this board. Catherine, the person that leads this board is someone who lives in Isla Vista. I just think that's the most important. So, and I understand Ethan is in a situation that he can't step forward, and I wonder, given that, does it make sense for us to is it possible to postpone this until we have a little bit more clarity as to the direction of some of the members on our board and their next steps? I throw that out there, but I also think that Marcos would do an excellent job as vice president or president.
Director Bertrand, go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate you asking that, Director Deschler. Very thoughtful of you, but I'm prepared to support our very capable colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. I will say, yeah, I feel the same way that I think Director Freeman, Director Deschler expressed about the purpose of the role and wanting to make sure that we are making this an opportunity for leadership development. So I'm prepared to support anyone who wants to throw their hat in the ring for either position that is on our board in the elected body, because I agree with Director Deschler, that's important. If my colleagues did so wish to choose me or nominate me to stay on as president, I would be honored to continue in that role. Director Freeman.
So I guess given what Kirsten was just saying and given the kind of direction of some of these comments, you may as well at least explicitly ask, Marcos, would you be interested in president?
I'm definitely interested. I'm intimidated by the idea. Like I said before, I haven't given it serious thought. I'm not like, if we could put some time to think about this, everyone, to try and imagine like if I would be a viable president in your own views, because I don't think that we all have considered this plan before, or maybe I'm the person who's considered it the least, myself as board president. But I am interested, but I need to really make sure that I am willing to put all that time into this board.
Maybe some Spencer or potentially Ethan from his previous experience of this would be willing to spend some time here discussing what the responsibilities of president have been, and talking about some of the time commitments and things like that.
Yeah, those are the kinds of questions, or these are the kinds of like bigger topics that I need fleshed out a little bit.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about some of the responsibilities. The first, obviously, that you see most visibly is chairing the meeting. So playing that role. In addition to that, I work with the general manager to build the agenda. Jonathan does most of the legwork, but we work together to make edits to it when that's necessary, and when there are certain things that we want to discuss and forward to the agenda for board discussion. So it's coordination with staff. Additionally, you're, as the board president, the representative of the district at certain external events. For example, one that's been important to us in the past has been LAFCO, which we've got some help now that we've got Jay on there as a commissioner. But in representing our organization to LAFCO, or sometimes when we take positions, the Board of Supervisors or other government agencies, such as the City of Goleta when library was happening, being that representative and trying to work with the staff and the elected officials to try and find solutions. Ethan, is there anything else that you'd add into that?
I think you covered it well. It's definitely a lot of both working to keep our board on track, but also being a good spokesperson for the district, and really trying to get out there as much as possible on the district's behalf to build relationships in the wider community, which I'll point out all of us do and can do in our individual roles too. But as the board president, I think it takes another level. I think that there are a lot of folks on this board who would be great in board president. We have a very strong board, which is something to be grateful for, and a committed board. So I'm thankful for that. But I think, Spencer, you covered it well. One thing I'd like to note for the public, anyone watching, this discussion that we're having might seem a little awkward, but the reason we have to discuss these things so openly is with the Brown Act, none of us have really been able to talk about this outside of this format. So I recognize that if someone's watching, they might be like, huh, have they really not discussed this? No, we can't, unfortunately. So just a note for people who are watching.
Yes, thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Couldn't have put it better myself. So with that, are there any other thoughts that board members have?
Well, I would ask if Jay has given some thought. I don't know, Jay, if you've served in a leadership role and if that's something that you've considered. I appreciate that, Marcos, this is a lot. Just have 5 minutes, whether or not you want to do the next year of your life to meeting with Jonathan on a weekly basis. So yeah, so I know I'll just put it back to Jay to see if that's something that he's considered of taking the leadership, the president role.
I've absolutely considered it. I have definitely been interested in it. Given that there is a number of activities that, just to be honest, given that there's a number of activities that the board has been working on that I clearly am an extreme minority on, it feels a little bit awkward for me to be the representative of the board in other contexts. And I think that it could be very complicated in order to take on that role. So I pretty much never try to push people to choose me, and just being very honest about that, because I have been very interested in it. So.
Well, it seems like we need to give 5 minutes to Marcos to decide.
Thank you for the honesty, Director Friedman. Thank you for the questions, Director Deschler. Director Bertrand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we would have a very strong leadership team with Spencer and Marcos. I recognize that right now we have a number of ongoing long-term projects that do need some closure and that are right in the middle. So personally, I'd prefer having, if Director Brandt was willing to serve 1 more year as president, having you do that. And I realize that's a big ask. And I think Director Aguilar would make a wonderful vice president and be ready to step up as president in the future. I think there are a lot of ways to do this too. So that's not the only one. But I think you two would make a really good leadership team. Marcos, I think that you could bring a lot to the table in your role as vice president. And in both of these roles, you really get to help steer how we do this work. And I'm excited for both of you if you accept.
If the board wishes, I am happy to accept the nomination. Director Aguilar, I think what Director Bertrand was doing was nomination. Do you accept the nomination?
I do accept the nomination.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from board members? Director Flaherty.
I would just like to add to the comments that I think you both will be a really great team. And I would really love to see you both represent this board. So I'm happy to support you both.
Thank you, Director Flaherty. And I just really want to thank you for all of your service over the past year, working diligently and diving deep into some of these really complex issues and helping us find solutions. It's been really fun to watch you learn and grow in that role. And I know we'll continue to do that in your role continuing as a director. So thank you for all your service.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from the board? Sorry, it's always a little bit awkward to chair the meeting when you're also being nominated for. So seeing no other discussion.
I just want to verify I understand what's going on. So this is Spencer president, Marcos vice president? Is what was this nomination just explicitly occurred, or?
I believe Ethan just dropped off, but that's my understanding. Jonathan, did he?
He's coming back now. He's just.
I'll second that nomination or make it.
Okay. I think it was made by Bertrand and
I
now
think
it's
so,
seconded by Topliff. And I see Director Bertrand back now as well.
Yes, apologies. I always lose service at the worst possible moment in these meetings. So are we moving the two positions together, or would you like separate votes?
We can do it together.
Great. I would like to move to elect Spencer Brandt as board president and Marcos Aguilar as board vice president for 2022.
It's been a motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
I'll second. Let Kristen be the second.
Deschler with the second.
Is this one of those cases of a vote where the people who are nominated have to not? I don't remember. I always ask this because I can't remember which kinds of votes those are.
It's customary that the people who have been nominated abstain, but there's no financial interest associated with it, so there's no strict conflict. It's more of a matter of tradition.
Well, I'm happy to honor the tradition and abstain just for the purposes of the public's benefit. I think we have to go to public comment first. Is there any public comment on the nomination for president and vice president? I think I see a thumbs up from Mark. Is that a hand?
It is not, just a thumbs up.
Okay. So with that, I think we'll close public comment. We have a motion on the table. And Jonathan, actually, because I think I'm a little confused now, because I'm now remembering to the Director Freeman's point just about voting or not voting for the nomination. And maybe I'll ask staff if you have any record of the precedent of how we've done things in the past, but I think we actually have done it the other way in the past.
Correct. Previously, the votes had been separate. So you had a nomination for president and you had a nomination for vice president. They were not joined together because traditionally people recuse themselves. So you would have an awkward situation of two recusals with this nomination, and maybe people want to vote for their preferred candidate for one of the offices. So my suggestion would be to break the motion into two and to take them separately.
Okay. How does that sound with the maker and the seconder?
I think that sounds okay.
Okay. So then with that, what exactly is the motion? Which one is it for?
Okay, so first I will move to elect Marcos Aguilar as vice president for 2022.
All right, and that's made by Bertrand and was seconded by Deschler. And we've done public comment, so I think we're going to go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Abstain.
All right, motion passes. Congratulations, Vice President Aguilar. And then we will go to a motion for the board president.
Okay, and so I will move to elect Spencer Brandt as board president for 2022.
Motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Deschler. All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Brandt,
I will abstain.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Deschler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Well, I want to say thank you to my colleagues for entrusting this responsibility to me. I serve at the pleasure of the board, and I really appreciate everything we've been able to do together and will continue to do over the next year. And I'm Director Aguilar, I'm very much looking forward to working with you in this new role to do better things for the residents of Isla Vista. I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Yes, I just really want to thank and congratulate Director Flaherty for all that you've done in this last year. I think you've been an incredible vice president. You've done great things with better connecting us with the student body, with really elevating some of the most pressing issues in our community, and being a really good representative. You've been dedicated. You've helped us through our meetings. You've brought a lot of experience to this position that none of us have. And I'm really proud of what you've done, especially in your first year as a director on this board. And I'm sure that Director Aguilar will do the same going forward. But just thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for those comments, Director Bertrand. Director Aguilar.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to everyone on the board for giving me this opportunity, and I promise that I won't let you down.
Thank you, Director Aguilar. Okay, now we are going to move to number 5.2, which is the Resolution 21-12 Board Meeting Calendar. Jonathan, anything to, oh, you're presenting it, go ahead.
Here's the calendar for next year. We get 2 months with one meeting, July and December, and the rest are the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays, except November, where we're on the 5th Tuesday because of Thanksgiving week. So same as this year.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Any questions or feedback from the board?
Do we have we landed on a date for our meeting where we all get together and talk about our priorities for the year?
No, I'll have to set that separately, but I was thinking a weekend in late January.
Okay, no, thank you.
I actually do have one question on this calendar as well, seeing as we were just talking about civic participation earlier in the meeting. I see one of our board meetings, actually, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong date. Never mind. You can disregard my comment. Okay, any other comments from board members on the calendar? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move to approve the 2022 board calendar.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Aguilar. Is there any public comment? All right, not seeing any. We'll go to a roll call vote.
Brandt?
Yes.
Director Flaherty?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Topliff?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
You say Deschler?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, motion passes, I think. Sorry, I think I cut out there a little bit.
We got all 7.
Okay. Next is the board committee structure.
Great. So for the board committee structure, you know, our committees have not been active this year except for our finance committee. But we have a policy committee, which I think is good to get back online now that we have our consultant doing assistant general manager duties, and they have some policy drafting in their backlog of work now to get done for us that we've had in the backlog for quite a while now. So the finance committee and the policy committee, I think, would be the 2 active committees. We've had a legislation committee that has not met before, but it does exist. And then we have our ad hoc committees, but those aren't usually part of this section because we set them on as needed basis. So we're finance committee and policy committee would be the 2 where we really need folks to step up with our budget process starting in January. and some policies that need to get reviewed instead of taking them straight to the board.
Could you just talk a little bit about, finance is self, I understand, but
Yeah.
the policy committee, could you just explain what that committee is about?
Yes. So the policy committee, how it used to work is, we would meet once a month. Jay was the chair of the committee, and the committee would have like a list of topics that we needed policies on. So it maintained a list like that, whether the board had recommended it or staff or the committee. And then we would work on drafting those policies on a regular basis. We used to do so much more. We don't do policy drafting as much, and part of it is because we don't need to as much. And part of it is because Deborah has been out and she was also doing a lot of that work for a few years. So we would bring the policy drafts to the committee, or the committee will have like a conceptual discussion and on what the draft should look like. Eventually, a draft will be approved by the committee and go to the board for approval. So it's pretty hands-on in the meetings. Like, we really look at things and dissect them and talk about different details. And I think a few people here have been, like Jay and Ethan, have been really active members in the past, and it can get very detailed. But the committee doesn't have to do the actual drafting of policies, not for 4 years at least, thankfully. Now, Jay, maybe you want to give anything else on policy?
Yeah, as Jonathan kind of did say, but maybe I'll just underscore it. When the district was first getting constructed, we did not have any policies, and there are so many just very basic policies that you need to have in order to even have a meeting. And so there was policy committee initially was a lot of time spending just like going through other policy manuals and attempting to construct policies. I think in the steady state of a district, you're occasionally making a tweak to a policy. There will be a legal change in the landscape. Ross will tell us, so now you're going to need a policy to cover something, and so we will have to make some kind of update. But it's not something where you need to be constantly working on policies because you have policies. And then the reason why, though, it is a committee as opposed to it being a board, which is for it's where I will say I have often at times advocated that some of these things would just go to the board initially, but then policy committees seem to be working fine. It is sometimes in the weeds, and we will sometimes spend an hour arguing over the wording of something. And so having a group of people who are interested in doing that work initially in order to get the first draft back to the board can be very helpful for, particularly if there's a contentious policy, something where the specifics of the wording might lead to a drastically different interpretation. So.
I think that's a good synopsis. Thanks for that, Director Freeman. And I see that you had your hand up too.
Yeah, a couple things. One thing is that for what it's worth, I would like to stay on policy committee. To the extent to which policy committee ever does meet, I find that specific kind of work fun. And I'm the kind of person who would like to actually sit around and spend the hours arguing over the wordsmithing of something. And I feel like my contributions to the compromises on some of the wording have been very valuable. And so I would like to stay on policy committee. I will also say that this is not me saying that I want to be on finance committee. I'm not saying that, but if anyone wants off finance committee and there's no one who will go on, I'm willing to do it. But this is me saying that I'm willing to do it. This is not me saying I want to do it. I certainly don't want anyone to make room for me. But since we're in this, we're about to have this discussion over who's on what committees, I was going to just say I'm willing to do that one. I did have a question though, which is related to this agenda item. So I hope that this is taken into consideration that over the course of the last 5 years, I've always had an angling towards trying to make things more publicly available. To the extent to which anyone has ever felt that, oh, my interest in making something publicly available because I'm trying to undermine something, which I'm just making explicit, I hope that I've proven that that is not the case, that I am just very interested in public, transparent meetings that are documented and that allow people to see the contents of everything. And it came up earlier in the meeting that the question of access to the nightlife committee. And I started thinking about it. I started having this realization that that committee has operated for a while, and it is not operating for a specific event at this point. It is kind of operating towards the idea of setting up events and doing coordination. Is this something that should no longer be an ad hoc committee and should become a standing committee based on the more general focus and the amount of time that it has operated, and the fact that I doubt that we're going to sit here, look at it, say, oh yeah, this has been operating for a long time now, we're going to shut it down. That doesn't seem like the direction that anyone's going to go in. And so maybe this needs to be a standing committee that is subject to the Brown Act. I then just want to bookend and say, I'm not trying to cause a problem with that committee by doing that, but it's just, when there's an active discussion and there are even people in the public who are saying that, hey, I wasn't noticed where is that meeting? Why can't I participate? It starts to make me start to like, maybe we should figure out how to make this more public. But
I can respond to that.
I think I want to go to Director Bertrand first, just because I think that there might be a little bit of confusion, I think, of mixing up two committees.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, a couple of committees. So we've had a number of ad hocs that have worked in this space. We had a previous iteration of the Spring Festival ad hoc committee. We've had our nightlife ad hoc committee. We've had our Halloween ad hoc committee. And tonight we've seen the work product of our current Spring Festival ad hoc committee. And the question from the community member, I think, was focused to that. As part of your larger question, I think that is something we can discuss with council and come back in the future on. But just wanted to point out that these are different committees.
Thanks for that explanation, Director Bertrand. And council, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just as an informational angle, or to kind of fill out the discussion, I also agree that having this, if more information is needed, we can bring back a more wholesome analysis. But to start with, there's no requirement to have it be an ad hoc not subject to the Brown Act. The board can make a committee subject to the Brown Act simply in its creation. So that option remains, regardless of it's an ad hoc committee or a standing committee. The Brown Act is written in a way, apropos of Director Freeman's comments, to foster as much transparency and public participation as possible. And so it's more of, that's the default. And the exceptions are as outlined. One of those exceptions is the creation of ad hoc committees, which typically are limited in scope and are limited in duration. So if at any time the scope of a committee starts to grow, some directors have mentioned this as mission creep, or if the duration of it, generally speaking, extends beyond 6 months. At that point, the question is appropriately raised is whether to have this become a standing committee, which must be adherent to the Brown Act. So with respect to having separate ad hoc committees that are specifically focused on the Spring Festival or Halloween or nightlife in the past, whether to formalize any of those is a question that the board should answer for itself and for the public. And then based on that, that will trigger the Brown Act requirements. But if at any point the board wants to have an ad hoc committee subject to the Brown Act, it absolutely can do so. And then it just has to comply with the noticing requirements as it would for any other type of a meeting. So just general information, both for the board and for the public.
Yeah, thank you for that, council. I think that helps explain the differences and the purposes. And while I understand where Director Freeman is coming from, and I appreciate the concern that was raised in public comment about wanting more information or not having seen the notice to the meeting, I will just point out that I think that there's a place for the ad hoc committee, especially when it comes to doing work that is fundamentally sort of drafting and sort of administrative and working with our staff on bringing these proposals forward, as distinct from if we had an ad hoc committee that was creating official policies for our board. I think that it might be a little bit of a different sort of distinction. So I think that how we have things set up makes sense, and that it's also a call and a reminder for everyone that is on an ad hoc committee that we all need to always be doing everything we can to do outreach to those in the community to try and gather as much public input as possible. So, Jonathan, do you think you could just share with us the current membership roster of the committees?
Yes, let me pull that up. I actually had it and closed it. Yeah, give me 1 second. Here it is. So our current committees, we only have Jay and Catherine on policy committee. And then we have Ethan, Spencer, and just Ethan and Spencer on finance. Bob was on both. So that's why both only have 2 members, because Bob is not on the board anymore. And then our legislative committee, we had picked Marcos and Spencer for that. But we, like I said, we haven't met. And that's about it. And our Spring Festival committee was the most recent one was Carrie and Spencer and Catherine.
And Catherine as well. Okay, so let's take those that we have a vacancy first. Is there anyone interested in serving on the policy committee? Director Aguilar. Okay, is there anyone else interested in policy committee? Okay, well then with that, I think that we should take separate votes on each one that we consider. Does anyone have a motion?
I will move to appoint Director Aguilar to the policy committee.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bertrand. Any public comment?
Just to clarify, our other 2 members are sticking with it, right? Good.
Yes, so actually that's right, because the item is committee structure, or yeah, actually, because we don't have to reappoint. It's not a membership term of 1 year.
No, and it says consider any changes. So this is the change.
Okay. So then with that, oh, I do see a hand for public comment now on Marcos's appointment. I'll go ahead to Mark.
Can I just clarify? So I have nothing against Marcus's appointment. That is there a portion to be talking about committee structure as a whole, or is there only going to be public comment to talk about specific appointments of individuals?
I think once we get done with the nominations to the committees, we can have discussion about that and then open up public comment for that if we make any changes.
Okay, I look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, so back to the board. We have a motion on the table. Let's go to a roll call vote.
Brandt?
Yes.
Verity?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Topliff?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Deschler?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. So the next committee in which there's a vacancy is the Finance Committee. Are there any directors who are interested in serving on the Finance Committee?
I am willing to do it.
All right, we have a willing.
Okay, well, I have CPA as initials behind my name, so I kind of
I
feel
want
like
Carrie to do it.
I kind of feel like I got to step up in these situations. So here I am. I'll nominate myself.
Okay, we have a nomination for Topliff. I think I saw a hand from Director Bertrand too.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to hear especially the interest from Director Topliff, but I appreciated Director Freeman stepping up as well. Finance Committee is always something I enjoy doing, so I'm happy to keep my name on the roster.
I have no interest.
Glad that we got that out there. Okay, so we have a nomination for Toplift. Bertrand, happy to continue. I'm also happy to continue on the committee. So I think
I'll second that nomination if you're waiting for that. Like,
okay, so there's a nomination for Toplift that's been made and seconded. Is there any public comment on Director Toplift's nomination to the Finance Committee? Seeing none, we'll go back to the board and we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
yes.
Toplift,
Abstain.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Abstain.
Deschler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Okay, the next committee that you mentioned, Jonathan, that has a vacancy was...
We have a legislation committee with 2 members now, you and Marcos.
That's correct. And we haven't had a whole lot of legislation to consider recently. Is anyone interested in joining?
That is something I can join.
All right.
If you want me. I do have an expertise in that area.
Somebody tells me it's right up your alley.
Only if you need it. That's all.
All right. Well, I will nominate Director Deschler.
I'll second that.
I will say.
Seconded by Flaherty. Is there any public comment on Director Deschler's nomination to the Legislation Committee? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board and we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Deschler.
Do I have to abstain? Because if I can't vote for myself, what good is it? I vote for me.
Toplift.
Yes.
And Bertrand.
Yes.
Well, spoken like a true legislative advocate, Director Deschler. Motion passes. Okay, so I believe that we have all of the vacancies on the committees filled. I also wanted to open it up for any other discussion about committee structure. So this can be how committees are made up. I'll also add, just for the public, because it can be a little bit confusing, one of the committees we're not considering tonight is the Community Center Advisory Board, which is a separate body that the board appoints to. And that committee has an appointment process that will be considered at a future meeting. The application period actually just closed. Jonathan, can you give a brief update on that? Did we get applications for all of the open positions?
We sadly did not, so we'll need to extend it. We did get 1 application, but we have 4 open spots, so we will need to extend the deadline.
That's good to know. So just as a primer for members of the public, that process will continue to be ongoing. Okay, and any thoughts about committee structure from directors? Well, seeing none, I know we had someone who wanted to make public comment on this, so any public comment on committee structures? All right, go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Spencer. Yeah, in terms of both like what to me as a member of the public makes logical sense, but also for public transparency. And I'll be honest, I don't fully understand the current structures right now, but it does seem like it would make a lot more sense to have 1 public events committee that is a standing committee. It could be subject to Brown Act rules, or you all can just make it a public committee that does the nitty-gritty details of doing Halloween, Deltopia, or Spring Festival, or any other additional events, and can maybe even develop some expertise and subject matter expertise in doing those like understanding and developing those events, rather than creating ad hoc committees for each of those every time. To me, I would prefer that as a member of the public. It would, yeah, I really believe in developing expertise of the legislators and politicians so that they understand how to do it better the next time, in terms of like creating these RFPs, or in terms of working with Jonathan to develop them, and or working with the actual whoever comes back with a proposal, whether it be Lucidity or another organization. So I would really try to advocate for having just one standing committee that could do all special events and deal with all of the nitty-gritty details, and do it in a public and transparent way. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mark. Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Director Freeman.
I am curious to see what happens if I move to establish a standing public events commission or committee. I don't know if anyone will second it. I don't know who would vote for, but I figure that I will make the motion in order to see what happens.
All right, motion made. Is there a second? So I think not seeing any seconds, I see some hands, but I want to ask a question to council. So if there's a standing committee, what's the maximum number of board members that can be on that committee?
You can't have a quorum of the board. So in case of a seven-member board, you cannot have 4 board members. So the maximum would be 3.
Okay, so a 3-member committee. Now, when it comes to Brown Act purposes, if we have a committee of 3 members, that is a standing committee, are those 3 members allowed to communicate with each other, because they would constitute a majority of the committee if even 2 of them spoke to each other about something that was coming before that committee?
That's a good question, and it would really depend on what the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee would be. Because if it's only some type of an advisory where everything has to be approved by the board of directors, then the committee really isn't taking any actions without the final approval of the board. Ultimately, though, from a technical standpoint, you have the type of problem that you just illustrated. So they could, if they comprised a majority of the board of that committee, then yes, you would have a Brown Act problem of them committing to each other. You'd have a serial meeting, et cetera, if they're an established Brown Act body. Is anybody going to complain about that? I mean, who knows? But yes, from a technical standpoint, even with a limited subject matter jurisdiction, that's still going to be an issue. One of the uses of a standing committee, in addition to the ones I said before, are when they meet more regularly, as opposed to ad hocs, are catch as catch can't. When are people available to sit down and meet? There's no established location. There's no established time. The second thing is ad hoc committees are populated only by members of the board. With an events committee, which was the motion made, or a district programming committee, or whatever it is that the board may end up discussing, you can have members of the community take part. And if you have 7 members of the committee and 3 of them are board members, then you don't have a Brown Act problem. But if the only members of the committee are 3 of board members, then you can't have more than 2 talking, because that's a majority of the committee. That make sense?
It does. And the reason I bring it up is because, well, you said, are people in the public going to complain? It is a complaint that had been brought up, fairly vigorously when the district was first being established. And unfortunately, it's not the first time that we've had the discussion about this. And I remember going through that as a member of something called the Formation Committee, which you may remember, Ross, because I think that's the first time that we met. But those of us that were on the Formation Committee who were tasked with putting together recommendations about all these different things about establishing the CSD could not speak to each other about any of these things outside of the committee meetings, which made it very inefficient. And I know it was frustrating for me, especially because the Formation Committee, we were handling things that were very time sensitive and time bound. There's a clear end time to once we get everything together in order to be fully formed. So I bring that up just as why I would be a little bit hesitant, and why I don't know if a standing committee is the right way for us to move forward with.
And that was exacerbated by the fact that there was no administrative staff. So you had directors acting in legislative capacities, but also trying to implement administrative tasks, which absolutely was frustrated by the fact that nobody could talk to each other. At least at a minimum, that complication would be avoided, because now the district does have staff that it can rely upon to facilitate that administrative execution component, as well as to help facilitate bringing things back to a larger board. Another suggestion is that in the interest of time tonight, to the extent that the board feels that it's something that merits further discussion, we can put together something a little bit more formal and some recommendations that cover the legal aspects, that to talk about potential subject matter jurisdictions, and then we can report that at the first meeting or one of the meetings in January. So certainly that's an option. That way, members of the public who bring it up and directors who have expressed interest in having it as a standing committee, have the opportunity to have a fulsome discussion and a fulsome analysis, frankly, that may help the eventual policy decision that the board makes.
Thanks for the analysis, Council. Okay, I'm going to go to Director Aguilar and then Director Freeman.
Well, thank you everyone for this discussion. Thank you, Ross, for some of those clarifications. I want to start off with what we just discussed, which is that I think that the board and the public does deserve like a fleshing out of this kind of topic. Nightlife has come up to our board, whether it's in these other shorter term standing or other shorter term ad hoc committees, or the nightlife ad hoc committee, more than once in 1 year. So clearly the need is very present for our neighborhood, for our community, and it's a persistent need. One of the reasons why I'm voting yes on this spring festival is because this is something that is a part of Isla Vista, and that I hope continues to be a part of Isla Vista, which is nightlife, which is excitement, which is community gathering, in a non-political sense of community gathering, but in a joyful celebration sense. That's what this Isla Vista community really means. That's what drew so many people to this place. I think this needs a lot more discussion. I don't think that it's possible or smart to turn the nightlife committee as it is immediately into a standing committee, just based on what I've heard so far and the powers and the rules of how to keep things separate. But I do think that there is a policy on nightlife that needs to be discussed. Maybe those needs are already met with things like the public safety like work that we do. Maybe those needs are met in other policy work that we do. But I do think that we have to take some of this standingness nature of the nightlife committee and make sure that it's handled in other places by our board, and not left in a in-between area, mostly to give our public and our neighbors like full transparency. They want to know, we want them to come to these events. We want them to have a safe nightlife experience. So we need to have them aware of everything that we're discussing. So I think that this is a really meaty topic. It's been the longest discussions we've had this fall have revolved around nightlife and events. So I think that it's worth looking at with a greater lens.
Thank you for those comments, Director Aguilar. Director Freeman.
I first want to say very much appreciate the comments from Marcos on this topic, and I agree with a lot of what was said there. I'm looking at something that Spencer had said about the efficiencies of having an open committee. I'll note that is one of the specific, explicit even statements about the Brown Act, and which comes up during our public meeting trainings, et cetera, is that the goal of government is not necessarily always to be maximally efficient with respect to the time that we do things, but to allow the public to have the access and to the information, to allow them to have the ability to provide input. And given that we are allocating a good amount of our budget towards this, or at least intend to, that's not even the right word. Given that we are considering, regardless of what I or any of those predictions might be, are looking at allocating a sizable percentage of our budget towards this, and we have had now a number of committees that have all had very similar charges, and that it's kind of feeling like a little bit like a serial ad hoc committee. It starts to feel to me like this should maybe be a standing committee. As far as the frustration of feeling like you can't talk to the other people who are on your commission or on your committee, you can have a lot of meetings. I mean, there's nothing to say that you can't have a meeting every week. There's nothing to say that you can't have a meeting twice a week. There's nothing that as far as I know, that prevents you from having a agenda for that meeting that is simply the same agenda item, saying that you're considering something over the course of weeks on end. You don't have to have ahead of time planned out for each agenda the specific thing you're working on if you don't know what it is yet. So I think that sometimes the perception that making something open to the public is going to slow it down or is going to make it really difficult to do is overblown. There's I think sometimes a feeling that it can be difficult to talk about some things in front of the public, but I think that's also part of our job. And I think that it's the extent to which it was noted earlier, you can start trying to explain to the audience, this might seem like a really weird conversation to be having in front of everybody, but that's how I think a lot of government and political conversations end up happening, is that we essentially set up a public meeting time so that every week we're going to show up here, we're going to talk about something awkward in public, but we're going to get used to doing it in public with reporters, with cameras, with whatever else we can come out. So, yeah, that's my comment on that.
Thank you for your comments, Director Freeman. I appreciate this discussion. I think it's been very robust, even albeit a little bit meta for us to be talking about committees as we're on a committee. And so I want to be cognizant of that. I don't think we should take any action on this tonight. I think we should bring this back to the board and have a future discussion. I will say that I think we need to balance the heavy requirements of having a standing committee, including the staff time that incurs, then the inflexibility of directors, because it's not really about not wanting to have an open meeting in my mind. It's about the flexibility. It's like if I'm on a committee with Jay, I can't give Jay a call and work something through him when I have the idea in my head, which maybe for me, just as an ADHD brain, it's important that I'm thinking about this right now. I want to talk to Jay about it right now and see what he thinks. I think what could be a good thing for us to consider moving forward is to really make sure that it's enshrined that when we have ad hoc committees, that they are required to do a public meeting, so that we can preserve the flexibility for directors to be able to talk to each other and not get in a legally compromising situation, but also ensure that there is always public participation at every step of the way. So I throw that out there. I think maybe if there's any action we take tonight, it's to direct staff to bring something back to us for us to consider at a later meeting. That's kind of my thoughts.
From a procedural perspective, by the way, I retract my motion.
Okay, thank you, Director Freeman. Director Bertrand.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's comments. Spencer, I think what you just proposed is an elegant solution. I like the idea of maintaining ad hoc committees when needed for flexibility, but making sure that ad hoc committees do have public meetings as they go through their work. I think that's really cool. And I do agree that we shouldn't take any action tonight, but should bring this back. And I'd be supportive of us considering this at our next meeting. And if we need more time too, that's fine. But I think we can start with an agendized item at our next meeting.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, I think staff has direction on bringing something back to us.
Yeah, we'll have
President Brandt, I'll just make a note that the Mark V made a comment in the chat. He just said he would appreciate some type of policy about ad hoc meetings as defined as public meetings according to specific rules for the district, but did not become standing committee subject to the Brown Act. So just for the record that Mark V made that comment in the chat.
All right, thank you for that, Council. And thank you for the comment, Mark. Okay, so with that, we're going to move to the next item, which is meeting format. Provide feedback on preferred meeting format for 2022.
Yeah, I think this was something that had come up at our last meeting, potentially the one in November or one before that, where the board wanted to talk about how we wanted to move forward with hybrid, Zoom, and in person, and what the preferences are. So would like to hear, as we can plan for January, how we would like meetings to look and go.
So I think we've had a couple of discussions about this. I'm wondering, maybe just to kick off the discussions to make it a little bit easier, maybe if we just kind of did a straw poll of all the directors to see what people are feeling right now. And I'll just start with the first person I see on my screen. So no need to give a super long explanation, just kind of where you're at, hybrid, full Zoom, or full in-person. And I'll start with Director Bertrand.
Yeah, right now I probably would recommend virtual, but I think hybrid could work too. I'm hopeful that there will be a time when we can all meet in person again soon. But given just a lot of the indicators, I think we are still very much in a socially distant world where we can safely meet in a virtual format. But if folks were to suggest hybrid, I think that would be okay. We could figure out a way to do it. But aside from the health concerns, whether we stay virtual or go hybrid, I really think that having this online option for public participation has been awesome. There have been so many more people who have been able to come to our meetings, come in for some items, come in at one point of the night, leave and come back later. There's a lot of flexibility. So I do hope that whatever we do, we preserve the online participation for the community.
Thank you for that. Okay, Director Deschler, where are you at?
I second Ethan. Everything Ethan said, I agree with. I prefer virtual for health reasons and convenience reasons. And I also think it's accessible to the public. And I appreciate that people can be at home or wherever they're comfortable and participate in these meetings. And I think there's a great value of this Zoom format. So this is my preference.
Thank you. Director Friedman?
That is also my preference. I will add one additional detail, which is that if there is, although it hasn't come up yet, but to the extent to which there is concern about having a public space or trying to do some kind of minimally hybrid meeting, I'm willing to be the one person at the office trying to run a claim that if somebody really wants to show up, they can and have the meeting. But I would prefer that over full hybrid.
All right, Director Flaherty.
I think I'm largely in agreement with that too, with what previous directors have said. I do struggle because I think having it fully virtual does allow for greater connection with the public, versus sometimes it can be hard when like all the directors are in a room and it's hard to see like maybe who's talking, or you can't see certain facial expressions. I do think Zoom is helpful in creating that connection when we're all on our own devices. And so I think that's definitely a pro for staying virtual. I feel comfortable going to hybrid, but I also think it might be best to stay virtual, at least for the time being. And then definitely as we transfer back to in person, I would really love to see a virtual option as well, because I think that it does increase public engagement, which I think is really important. So I do feel comfortable with either. It seems like we are leaning a bit towards virtual, which I do support.
Thank you, Director Flaherty. Director Aguilar.
Yeah, I want to support the virtual meetings while we still have our health concerns as a community. But I do look forward to a future in which we can meet in person.
Thank you for that. Director Topliff.
For me personally, virtual is by far the best. I live in 93105, so it's a little bit of a travel for me. I do really like in-person meetings, but I felt like I really heard Director Freeman when he talked about the difficulties of hybrid meetings and how it's not an equally shared experience for everyone. So I think because of that, I would tend towards virtual meetings in the short run and trying to get a way that we could get into a better hybrid model for the future.
Thank you for that, Director Topliff. So I think it sounds like we definitely have consensus on virtual. We have some interest in hybrid. I'm interested in both. I think I'll ask council just real quickly about as far as state legislation goes, because we know that the emergency order has to continue to be extended in order for us to even pass our resolution saying that we want to keep doing virtual. Has there been any indication about if that will continue to be extended?
The way that we are approaching it at this point, based on the governor's remarks when he basically was faced with whether to leave the state of emergency in place, we're interpreting those comments as it's effectively indefinite until the public health officials reach a consensus that the risk of transmissibility of COVID-19 and all of its combinations and permutations at this point reaches a point where the numbers are consistently down over a short and a medium term, that the state of emergency is most likely going to remain in place. The governor has at least given public agencies a fair amount of time and choreographed and telegraphed what's coming next so as not to catch folks unaware. The legislative lobbying groups, the Counties Association, Cal Cities, formerly League of California Cities, Special Districts Association, and others have a good line of communication with the governor's office. So if there's going to be any change in policy, we're going to know about it ahead of time with probably a fair amount of advanced warning as to when that is going to change. But given the latest variant that's being talked about and being studied, I think it's probably safe to say that the state of emergency is going to continue probably for the first quarter of 2022. So January, February, March. I would anticipate it's going to go that long, unless there is a dramatic breakthrough in information, is really what people are looking for right now on Omicron. Once the scientific community gets up to speed, they'll inform the departments of health, and the departments of health will advise the governor, and then we'll know more. But I think realistically, January, yes. February, most likely. March is more of a maybe, because 3 months out, that's a lot of time. that can happen. A lot of time that can pass and things can happen. So that's what we're expecting. That's what we're listening for. And the governor hasn't given any indication that he's going to ambush either the residents of California or the public agencies that serve them by not giving us enough time to adjust because of California law and the public transparency requirements.
All right, well, thanks for that synopsis, Council. And so based on that and based on what we've heard from the board, it seems like I think there's consensus about wanting to continue to stay virtual. And I think based on that update from Council, I think that we should probably plan to continue to stay virtual until that time, as which we hear that there could be something changing as far as the public health emergency order. Does that sound good to the board? I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay. Do we need any action on this, staff?
We don't.
No action. Just with that consensus of the board, I'll continue to work with Jonathan and the rest of staff to make sure that the requisite resolutions for reauthorizing the local state of emergency and reauthorizing the remote meeting procedures under AB 361 are timely presented before the board. Just as a reminder, they have to be renewed every 30 days. That's why we have to do one for every month, essentially. So the board is good through January. So the second meeting in January is when you'll see another continuing resolution. Things might change in the meantime. The board may want to hedge its bets and say, yes, we'll adopt it and then not need it for February. But that will be the timeline, the second meeting of every month for as long as it reasonably appears that the state of emergency is going to remain into effect.
Thank you for that, Council. So with that, I think we've come to the conclusion of our organizational session, and we are now going to move to reports, starting with reports from members of the board. Do any members of the board have a report they'd like to give? Director Freeman, go ahead.
I have two things I would like to say. First of all is that, so I've been serving on LAFCO for the last couple of years, and my LAFCO term is up. And so there will be now a nomination period, and I'm hoping that Spencer will nominate me. He's the presiding officer, this person does this. But I'm not. The world has changed, and I've changed, and some of the narrative of how I ran, I don't know, fits well with how the pandemic played out, particularly on me. And so I'm not certain if I will win again. I think there's a good chance that I will, but I figure I will just tell everybody that I might not be on LAFCO soon, but we will see how that election turns out. Also might be that no one runs against me, we'll see. The other thing I wanted to say is that the UC Santa Barbara subreddit is currently looking for a moderator and is particularly looking for a moderator that is a student, a currently active student. This is something that somebody that I know, some of you have met, Britta Gustafson is one of the moderators, and she wanted me to try to find and poke people about this. I figured, hey, I could bring it up here because I thought I would maybe Catherine or Marcos knows somebody who's a current student who'd be interested in doing this. The big task is essentially trying to help with finding extremely controversial or problematic comments as they come up, and diffusing is the word I'm looking for, diffusing the situation. But it's also something that Britta is a very long established moderator and has worked with volunteer communities moderating, for example, in the Cydia community that I was involved in for a long time, and is somebody who can, if you're interested in learning how to be a good moderator, this would also be an interesting opportunity, but they're actively looking for student moderators.
Thank you for that report, Director Freeman. Director Bertrand, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to share that during our last meeting, I was attending the LGBT Leaders Conference hosted by the Victory Institute in DC. It was a gathering of about 1,000 elected and appointed officials from throughout the country. And we spoke about a lot of issues pertinent to Isla Vista. We spoke about housing, policing and justice reform, transportation and pandemic response. And it was great to connect, especially with local officials from different areas and also fellow Californians about what's going on in our communities. I got to speak with an elected official from Michigan who is familiar with the Munger dorm out there. So it was great to speak with folks who are working on similar issues and look forward to working to implement some of what I learned with you all. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Director Topliff.
Yes, I just wanted to report that as a former chair of the board of the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District, I reached out to Pegeen Sutar recently, and she was kind enough to have lunch with me and give me a tour of the parks. And we had a very nice interaction and really affirmed the strength of our individual organizations and how much we want to work together in the future. So it was a very nice interaction, and she was very gracious in telling me a lot about what's been going on in the Park District.
Thank you for that, Director Topliff. Any other reports from board members? I'll add in one quick thing, which is I want to thank Director Deschler as well as Associate Vice Chancellor John Longbreak at UCSB for inviting me to take a tour of the Munger door mock-up. It was a great experience to actually get to see on the ground what the scale model looks like. And I know we all were able to have a great conversation and give each other some great feedback. One of the things I encouraged the Vice Chancellor was to figure out a way to get more people in our community to go ahead and see it. I think Jonathan's had a chance to see the mock-up as well, and I just think it's a good experience and helps spark an important dialogue in our community that's going on right now about housing and about livability. So I appreciate you for inviting me to take that tour. And I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Thank you. And I just jogged my memory about what I would have reported at our last meeting, which is two-part. In the spirit of housing, myself and our general manager spoke at a forum organized by the UCSB Associated Students president, Yuval Cohen, and her staff. And it was on the student housing crisis, both in Isla Vista and on campus. It featured Jonathan and I from the IVCSD, as well as representatives from UCSB Community Housing Office, folks from the Office of Student Affairs and other on-campus organizations. And there was a really good amount of community participation in outlining the concerns that do exist, but hopefully also the solutions that will come. I do want to give a shout out. There were a number of folks on the panel, including Jen Burcham, who works directly with students and community members. And they really are going above and beyond to support community members during this time. I was really impressed with what they had to share and just want to acknowledge how much I appreciate what they are doing. Additionally, I spoke at the Santa Barbara City College board meeting, which President Brandt spoke at as well, in support of a housing feasibility study that they're doing, because we know that we also house many Santa Barbara City College students in Isla Vista, which is a good thing. But we know that just like UCSB students, City College students need more support from their campus as well when it comes to housing. So just wanted to share that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Seeing no other reports from board members, we're going to move to reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Any committee reports? Well, you all got to see the fruits of the Spring Festival ad hoc committee this evening. One thing that wasn't on our agenda was the planning RFP ad hoc committee, which has been drafting or had been drafting the proposals and then evaluating the proposals that got sent back in. Me, as well as Carrie and Catherine had a great meeting to go over the proposal, and I think had some really good feedback that we were able to share with one of the consultants. And Jonathan is going to be working with them and us over the next month, well, what's left of this month and early next month, to bring up a proposal for our board at the January 11th meeting. Any other committee reports that I'm forgetting? Okay, next is report from District Council.
Thank you, President Brandt. Most of what I wanted to cover has already come up in other contexts and related to continuing with remote meetings and what we've been hearing. So I don't really have anything further to report on that. I am looking forward to the opportunity to either attend a hybrid meeting in person or when we return to full in person. I've already spoken to Jonathan, but I've got some extra computer equipment that I'll be donating to the district when I have an opportunity to drive up. I've got an extra monitor and a wireless keyboard and maybe a laptop or two. I might be able to help staff put to good use in furtherance of the board's policy directives and just to help out the community. So hopefully we'll be able to drive up and drop that stuff off sooner rather than later. Other than that, nothing further, and I hope everyone has a good holiday season, a chance to recharge and to return ready to go again in January.
Thank you for that, Council, and thank you for your generosity. Next, we're going to go to report from General Manager.
Great. So last 2 weeks since the last board meeting, I did have the flu for like half that time, so not as much to report during this report, but I will say that one of the things that came up earlier in the meeting was the newsletter, and that is something Sydney is working on and to get launched soon. We're doing all the prep work for that, but she is working on it. And she's also been doing an amazing job planning our STEP grant outreach for next fall, next winter and spring and beyond. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. That's when we really go full and spend that budget from the grant. Compost Collective, Carly attended a workshop on how to sell compost now that the state law is going into effect on January 1st, requiring composting. So we did attend that, and we did apply for a grant with the Fund for Santa Barbara Youth Making Change, since our program qualifies for that. And so we're waiting on the results of that. And she's working on the yearly program review, which will be the first part of the budget process, and at the next meeting will be brought to you. So compost program review, and we did have an issue with our electric bike where it was stolen. We were able to successfully retrieve it and increase our security at the shed where it's stored. So now there's a motion sensor and a camera that the church is operating. So we're not having to maintain those things and all the government compliance that goes with having recordings, but they are doing that on their property, and we support them in that. And we are very happy we found the bike. But yeah, so I wanted to let you know about that we have increased the security measures there now. Ivy Beautiful, they've been able to finally up their staff back to 2 crew members and looking for a third. And we're doing a wrap up of the quarter this week with, they've had a new program manager for 3 months now, and we're just going to review the quarter of what we've gotten done with them and make plans for next year. Nothing to report on our safety programs, rental housing mediation. We're going to be at the rental housing fairs that our UCSB is hosting next quarter. Thank you for Jay for forwarding that to us. So we'll be tabling just to get the word out. I have good news on the community center, community room. We did have a successful interview process, and we are making a job offer tomorrow. So we're excited to be moving forward on that. And like I said, with the community advisory board, we did receive 1 application, so we'll need to extend it to receive more. But we've also been separately talking to the 5 groups. Well, we're one of the 5. So the 4 other groups that appoint members themselves. So we've been talking to them about redoing their appointment or finding someone else or whatever that needs to be done. I think I mentioned before, but just to note again, January 4th, so the first day back or second day back from the winter recess, and then we're going to do the building inspection on the community center and community resource building. And the county just completed the ADA inspections for both buildings. I think this past Monday. It feels like a long time ago, a week ago, last Monday. So that's been done. I don't have the results for that, but they're working on that project. They did inspect our building already. Another thing with the STEP grant is our mobility survey is pretty much complete and will be able to launch at the beginning of January. So Sydney's worked very hard on that as well with our consultants. So we're ready to go on that survey. Parking, I don't know if our parking committee didn't give a full update, but we did have 4 proposals come through, and we are going to be working on evaluating them and reaching out to our partners and community members who are interested in this issue and just learning more, and just to help us review these proposals better and start making a decision in January. The proposals are good for 3 months. So they came in on November 30. So we've got until I guess March 2nd is 90 days from then to make a decision, which we'll do before then. And then planning report RFP, we'll have it at the January 11th meeting for the board, but we did get a good proposal there that we're ironing out. Retreat. So yes, I said late January or maybe early February is what we did last time to do the retreat. If you have topics, let me know. Any topics, like we said, staff outline or staff structure, which one of my tabs on my Safari is that, making that chart right now. But we're going to be talking about that, but other things, let me know. Finance, the audit is still not done. It's not on our end. It's all now with our auditor to wrap up their work. So waiting on that. We'll have a mid-year financial report next meeting. Here's something important. So I completed my biannual ethics and harassment training, and our rest of our staff we've worked with CSDA. Everyone's set up, got their email. I'm just going to send out some instructions on what to do, but our staff is now going to be completing them in the next week or so. And I think almost everyone on the board has given me that. I think Director Topol, if you actually joined after we had done our training session, so I'll get you that information now too. Unless CSDA sent you that, I had put you on the list to get sent your webinar. I'll work on that though with you. But if you haven't sent me in something, and I'll check in with you if I don't have it. I think everyone did it. I think I might just be missing a certificate or two, but we should be all good. And we do report to the county, everyone who's taken the ethics training. So that is the main one I need to have everyone done with so that we could report that to the county. So I'll let you know, but I think the board is pretty much caught up. And I just want to note, end of the year, we did accomplish, we did have 126 agenda items over the last year on our board meeting. So that's a lot, and that's not counting the consent calendar. And then our consultant, some of the things they're working on. So we finished the FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. So that's finished. The credit card is still, we sent in the new paperwork and we're waiting on it now. And they're going to be working on like our policies and procedures on using the credit card. We're going to finalize the 457B, but there's only a few things left for that. And I'm set up now to have our retirement payments just be directly pulled out of our paychecks and out of the CSD bank account direct to PARS. Couple things. So one thing they're going to be working on next is, it's been on our backlog, is doing our memorial policy and our naming policy, which was something the board had wanting to do. And back in May or April, we had voted on that, and it was one of Deborah's projects. So they're going to now be taking that on. But yeah, that's pretty much it on the report. Been a pretty successful year, I think, for our district.
Thank you for that report, Jonathan. Wow, very, busy times, and great to hear about all the progress. Any questions for Jonathan from the board? All right, well, not seeing any other questions, we're going to move to future meeting dates and agenda items. Next meeting will take place on January 11th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. And we spoke about some of the future agenda items that are coming forward already in the meeting. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Could I make a comment before we go?
Go ahead.
This is in the interest of transparency, and I will put a letter into to the board directly. But part of serving on, so I started serving on this board, I believe it was in February, and as the representative of the university, and as part of serving on the board, we receive a small stipend, and I just wanted to let people know that of that I've calculated, it's been about $2,000, and because I feel like I want to give back to Isla Vista, I'm contributing $1,000 to the Isla Vista Youth Projects, and then another $1,000 to St. George Youth Center. So $1,000 to Ivy Youth Projects and $1,000 to St. George Youth Center, and that is money that has come from the district. So I want it to go back to the community. So I'll put this in a letter, but I just wanted people to know, and I wanted to be transparent that I'm not keeping that money for myself. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler, and thank you for supporting Isla Vista organizations. I see a hand from Director Freeman.
I just want to make sure it's great that you're doing that, but you are spending time, and so from the like leftist pro worker on me is just wanting to point out that don't feel bad for getting paid for your time. And this is a lot of time, and you have a full-time job you have to do anyway. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but I am a university employee, and I am compensated for that, and this is part of that role that the chancellor appointed me to. So I feel like this is the right thing to do, and it makes me feel better to be able to contribute in this way. So thank you, though.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler.
And I will move to adjourn.
All right, motion
I
made,
will second.
seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment? Any more board discussion? All right, let's go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes, and happy holidays, everyone.
Yay.
Deschler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again in the new year. Take care.